Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Ramadan Blueprint. I am super excited to be here. Number one, because we have finally entered the less than a week towards Ramadan. Inshallah, Ramadan will be starting very shortly, maybe in about 3 or 4 days. And number two, I have some very interesting, informative, educational, and amazing information to present to you. My name is Mubarakah Ibrahim, and I am your health and happiness coach if you are tuning in. And if you believe that physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is intertwined, and the weakness of one weakens them all, and the strengthening of one strengthens them all, then welcome, you have found your tribe. Today, we are talking about Ramadan. We're not just talking about Ramadan in the sense of it being an obligation for every Muslim, but we are going to talk about the science of fasting and how it affects us on a physiological basis, affects our nutrition, affects our fitness. And so if you are a person that's interested in improving not just your spiritual well-being, but your physical well-being during this month, then you need to get your tea, get your water, pull up a chair, because we're going to talk. Now, I have to tell you that I do have a lot of information for you. So get comfortable and we're going to get into it. All right. So welcome to the Ramadan Blueprint. So if you are joining me on Instagram, I do have to encourage you to go over to Facebook, because I have an entire PowerPoint and exam. We're going to go through, show the research. We're going to show examples. And unfortunately on Instagram, you can't see all of that good information, right? So if you're okay with just watching and hearing me talk, then of course you're welcome to continue to join me on Instagram. However, if you would like to see all of the information that we are sharing, then definitely join us over on Facebook. All right, so hold up for a second. I want to make sure that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. We're going to get started in 1 second. We don't even have our Insta cousins with us. Okay, there we go. Insta cousins has now joined us. Okay, Ramadan Blueprint. Let's go. Who's excited? Are you guys as excited as I am? I'm excited that Ramadan is coming. I'm excited about all of the information that we get to share today. So definitely tag a friend, because this is all about fitness, nutrition, and how to make the most of your Ramadan this year. So we are on the Ramadan Blueprint. I am going to go straight to sharing my screen. Again, if you are on Instagram, you want to hop over on Facebook so you can be able to see all of the information on the screen that I'm sharing. Over on Instagram, we are also on YouTube. If you follow me on YouTube, you'll be able to watch this live as well. It will be recorded and left on these platforms for you to benefit from throughout the month. If you forget something, if you want to share it, but go ahead and share it now so it'll be right on your timeline and you will know where to find it, okay? So Ramadan Blueprint, let's go. So today we are talking about the science of Ramadan dry fasting, fitness, nutrition, and how to achieve and maintain your health and fitness goals during this month. If you don't know who I am, my name is Mubarakah Ibrahim. I am a health and happiness coach, and I have 20 years of experience in the health and wellness field. In that time, I have amassed 13 fitness and nutrition certifications, as well as an interdisciplinary bachelor's degree in exercise science, public health, and psychology. I was born and raised Muslim, and I've been doing some version of this thing we call fasting Ramadan since I was about 7 years old. You know, at 7, it starts off sort of kind of, you fast from breakfast until lunch, and then from lunch until dinner, and woohoo, I fasted. And then when you get about 10 years old, you actually get an opportunity to get up for suhoor and fast with everyone else, and you feel like a total big girl. It's like a rite of passage. So I became interested in the science of fasting as a part of my health and wellness focus in my career. We don't fast just for the physical benefits. We fast as a way that Allah tells us that it is for us to gain taqwa, meaning that we fast in Islam during the month of Ramadan as a means in which Allah says what is interpreted as, "O you who believe, observing the fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may become muttaqun," one who is pious, one who is God-fearing. So here Allah specifically tells us in the Quran that one of the reasons and the main reason we engage in fasting during the month of Ramadan is actually to engage our mind and our body in a very physical act to achieve spiritual growth. Right? So when I talk about physical, mental, and spiritual well-being being intertwined, there is no other time of year that it is more prominent than during the month of Ramadan. Right? Allah literally tells us that He is intertwining our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. He's asking us to do a very physical act to achieve spiritual enlightenment, wellness, strength, however you refer to it. It is the spiritual wellness that is connected to the physical. So we know as Muslims more than anything that physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is intertwined, and the weakness of one weakens them all, and the strengthening of one strengthens them all. Allah literally tells us this when it comes to the month of Ramadan. So there is no other time in which the interconnection between those things is so clearly seen than in Ramadan. Like even more than our prayer, which yes, we do it 5 times a day, but it's like 5-minute spurts. Ramadan is much more intense. There's longer days of this physical act to receive spiritual wellness. There is longer time spans, more quality, more quantity. It is really a boot camp of physical, mental, and spiritual wellness that is intertwined in this way for us to obey Allah, be better Muslims, be better people, and as a side note, it literally improves our health and well-being, and that is what we are going to focus on today. What is fasting? So we are talking about fasting from a physiological point of view, and so I want to actually reiterate that throughout this presentation because I want you to know that yes, we are Muslim. Yes, I am Muslim. Yes, I am aware of all of the benefits of fasting in terms of its spiritual benefits. But I want to bring attention to its physical benefits when it comes to fasting. All right? Fasting is defined. Why do we need to define fasting for a physical level? The reason why we want to define it is because it is to analyze the physiological changes, right? We got to know what we're doing in order for researchers to look at what's happening to our body. It is for people to research, to measure the health outcome as a result of the fasting, and to achieve, sometimes to achieve weight loss. People want to know, like, how is fasting going to affect that? And to minimize, and fasting is whether or not it minimizes strength. To look at the research of the health outcome, its weight loss, how does it affect strength? All of that is really important when we are looking at the research about what fasting is and what it does to our body. So fasting is defined as intentionally going without food or water, in our instance, for 12 or more hours. Ramadan is considered a soft, dry fast, right? So in the categories of fasting, Ramadan is first a dry fast. You may have heard the term intermittent fasting a lot during the last, 5 or so years. It's become super popular. But in general, when you're reading a blog or watching a YouTube or looking at something online, a site about intermittent fasting, they are normally referring to wet fast. That means that you get to actually eat and drink throughout the day, right? You can actually, you don't get to eat, you get to drink throughout the day. When you're fasting, you can have water, you can have black coffee, you can have green tea, right? Those are the 3 things that are permitted during your intermittent fasting hours. But a dry fast is what Muslims do. Also, Jewish people do this. Some Christians do it, particularly Seventh-day Adventists. Buddhists do it. Different religious practice what is called dry fasting. That means that not only do you refrain from food, but you also refrain from drinking anything, even water. Because it has been practiced for thousands and thousands of years, right? So we know this, number one, from the Quran, where Allah tells us it has been prescribed to those before us, but we also know this just as a historical fact that people in different cultures, in different geographical places in the world have all engaged in some form of fasting traditionally for thousands of years, right? So dry fasting is not new. What Muslims do is, for our research purposes, is called a soft dry fast, as opposed to what some people consider a hard dry fast. A hard dry fast means that people who do that, they don't have any external contact with water. So during their fast, they don't take showers or baths. They don't brush their teeth. They don't wash their hair. They don't go swimming. They don't go in water. They have no physical contact with water. Just as a side note, there's no scientific evidence or research that shows that there's any additional benefit from you to not have physical contact with water. And even theoretically, it really doesn't hold up as being beneficial because your body does not absorb water beyond your epidermis level when you are physically in contact with water. So here is the good news about fasting being defined and knowing the health outcome of fasting. The good news is most of the research on dry fasting has actually been done on Muslims. So the research that I am going to refer to, most of it, 99% of it, throughout our time together today, were actually done on Muslim communities, Muslim populations, looked at meta studies, a collection of different studies on Muslim populations, because Muslims tend to be the best subjects to study, right? Because in studying fasting, the most difficult part of studying fasting is actually getting people to adhere to the fasting for an extended period of time. Fasting for many people can be really hard, right? But when you have Muslims who are fasting, they're fasting for a religious purpose, right? They're not just fasting just to be a part of the study. They're fasting because there's an obligation. So we have a much higher chance of sticking to the protocol for the research purposes. So much of the research is actually done on Muslims. Again, I want to invite my Instagram people to jump over on Facebook or jump over on YouTube, because I am sharing a PowerPoint presentation with this talk today. So you can see all of the information, the studies, the really cool pictures I put together and all that great stuff, right? So what happens to your body when you're fasting? So previously we mentioned that when you are fasting, it is considered the 12 consecutive hours. That 12 consecutive hours is really important. Anytime you refrain from food or drink for less than 12 hours, you are not getting the physical benefits that we're going to talk about today. We're talking specifically with this definition in mind, because this is the definition that the research that shows these benefits actually give us, right? So why 12 hours? 12 hours because at 12 hours, your body depletes its glucose in the form of glycogen in the liver, and it begins to convert fat into ketones for energy. This is really important in the fasting process, because one of the main reasons why you get so many benefits during the fast is the lowering of insulin and the production of ketones. Those two very important physiological changes really completely change everything inside of your metabolism. Your metabolism, your immune system, everything begins to change when those two things happen. So 12 hours, your liver glycogen is depleted. And then your body starts converting fat into ketones. 16 hours, your insulin level lowers even more and inflammation begins to decrease, right? So you may have heard people say, well, I do intermittent fasting and I find that my arthritis is better. I find that my symptoms from lupus is better. I find that, I have less digestive disturbances with my Crohn's disease or irritable bowel syndrome. All of that is very true. And much research has been done to show that fasting actually benefits all of those things. And part of the reason why is because it lowers inflammation. So for most places right now, for this year, for most places, at least in the Western Hemisphere, I live in the United States of America, we're going to be fasting about 14 hours, right? It's not 18 like it was about 4 or 5 years ago. But if you are someplace where you're fasting 18 consecutive hours, at the 18-hour point, fat burn actually significantly increases, right? So this is important for a lot of people to know. We hear people using intermittent fasting as a means of weight loss a lot. And we also hear that in terms of, hey, do 16 hours of fasting and an 8-hour eating window. And even though that's promoted as a general way to do intermittent fasting, it's mainly promoted that way because it's the most practical way for most people, right? So not that it is the best for that specific protocol, but it is the most practical. But the research shows for the purpose of weight loss, which is termed lipolysis, it is the breakdown of the lipid cells of fat, right? The sweet spot for weight loss is between 18 and 20 hours, right? So you get some fat burn as you begin 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. And then there's a huge spike between hours 18 and 20. And it continues to go up, but not at such a drastic amount as it does between hours 18 and 20. The other thing happens between hours 18 and 20 that causes that is you have an increase in HGH, human growth hormone, which is your main fat burning hormone. So that is what happens at hour 18. By the time you get into hour 24, ketosis actually begins to increase. And muscle glycogen is now depleted. So meaning that we hold glucose in 3 places in our body. One of them is in our blood, right? People who are diabetic or pre-diabetic test that often. The second place glucose is held is as glycogen in our liver. And the third place that it's held is as glycogen in our muscles, right? So first the blood glucose is actually depleted. Then your glycogen in your liver is depleted. And then at about hour 24, your muscle glycogen begins to deplete itself. So there's all kind of research about how a 36-hour fast affects you, but we're going to leave it at 24 hours for today because we want to get on to the rest of the information, which is quite a bit. So what are some of the health benefits of fasting? And I'm going to say a couple of things. Number one, when we talk about health benefits of fasting, this is general. What are the general health benefits of fasting? Meaning that This is true and has been shown via research if you're doing a wet fast or a dry fast. This is true if you are fasting Ramadan or if you're fasting any other time of the year. These are some of the physiological benefits of going more than 12 hours without any significant metabolic process because of your consumption of calories and food, right? So another definition of what we're talking about when we terms of fasting. It boosts brain function. It improves insulin resistance and decrease the developing of type 2 diabetes. It can literally cut it in half. We're going to talk about that research study that was done on 7-day Adventist communities. It improves lipid profile, meaning if you have high cholesterol, it can improve your cholesterol ratio, but it affects women in a different way than it affects men. We're going to talk about that research, so stay tuned. It helps you to burn fat. It increases autophagy, which is cellular detox. So when you're talking about you want to detox, fasting is actually a means for you to do that, and it decreases inflammation. These are just some of the main benefits that lots of research has been shown for that are the benefits of fasting. So first, let's talk about fasting and its improving of cholesterol. What I want to say about this is true whether or not you dry fast or wet fast. The difference between dry fasting, as we do in the month of Ramadan, is it actually accelerates all of these effects. 1 day of wet fasting, 1 day of dry fasting is equivalent to 2 to 3 days of wet fasting. So everything that we're talking about that happens over an extended period of time or consistency with wet fasting, meaning you're drinking water during the day, you're drinking black coffee during the day, it actually accelerates. So for example, for the average person trying to get into ketosis, it normally takes a minimum of about 3 days. It can take as much as 2 weeks for people who have a large metabolic dysfunction. However, with dry fasting, you can get yourself into ketosis within 24 hours because it speeds up the process. All right. So I'm going to say that particularly for the benefit of people who are not Muslim, who are following and just want to know about the science of it. You too may want to try some dry fasting if you're already doing intermittent fasting. So how does dry fasting improve cholesterol? It improves cholesterol by improving the lipid profile. But here's the thing. They looked at 2 different studies of groups of Muslims, one in Dubai, one in Morocco, and they found that at the end of Ramadan, Muslims in Dubai did not improve their lipid profile. Muslims in Morocco did improve their lipid profile. When the researchers looked and considered what types of fat that these 2 communities consumed, the Muslims in Dubai actually consumed more saturated fat, and the Muslims in Morocco had more variety of fats, right? So yes, they consumed saturated fats, but they also consumed olive oil, and they consumed avocados, and they consumed fish, right? Having a variety of fats is absolutely essential, right? And it improved men cholesterol, the cholesterol of men, different than it improved the cholesterol of women. Men, total cholesterol and triglycerides decrease. Women saw an increase in HDL. That's the good cholesterol, quote unquote. But both groups had a decrease in LDL, quote unquote, the bad cholesterol. So it actually improved the lipid profile. So when we say lipid profile, means it's not about the total number, right? It's really about how much HDL do you have versus LDL, how much of your LDL is very low lipid dense, has very low lipid density. So when they looked at the profile ratio, it improved. Everybody's LDL went down, but women specifically saw an increase in HDL, and men specifically saw a decrease in triglycerides. It improves brain function, right? A study of Muslims fasting in Ramadan showed an increase in brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. BDNF is considered like miracle grow for your brain. It increases new neurons, it increases brain plasticity, it protects the brain through ketones and reduces oxidative stress and glutamate. Like, it is actually one of the most beneficial things for your brain. BDNF has been connected to depression, Alzheimer's, dementia, many neurological diseases. So what does that mean? That means that people who have major depression, when they look at their brains, they actually have less BDNF than someone who does not have depression. People who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia, they find that increase in BDNF actually helps to decrease those symptoms, and it wards off both of those diseases as well as improve them. There are several different ways for you to increase BDNF, including high intensity exercise, but fasting is also one of those ways, and particularly dry fasting. Again, it accelerates all of the effects of wet fasting. That makes Ramadan a perfect time for you to memorize Quran, right? So it's perfect because when BDNF increases, it actually increases your mental focus and your memory. So this is such a perfect marriage between the month of Ramadan being Shahrul Quran, the month of the Quran. It is a time for us to engage the Quran, and the physiological changes in our body actually helps us to be more attentive to the Quran and what we're reading, to study it and to memorize it. So the two, again, the science of the Sunnah matches together perfectly. The other benefit of fasting is decrease in insulin resistance. Now, we know, and if you followed me for any time, you know that I'm constantly talking about the metabolic dysfunction of insulin resistance. Fasting in particular does an amazing job in helping to decrease insulin resistance and increase insulin sensitivity. So why is it important to mention both of those things? Because number one, decreasing insulin resistance and increasing insulin sensitivity together means that it's not going to just happen while you're fasting. You're talking long-term effects, right? Dry fasting in particular has been shown to be extremely helpful for managing glucose. One study on dry fasting showed that it had a 50% reduction in glucose and IGF-1 within 24 hours. That is super significant, right? So when they looked at how it actually prevents you from developing diabetes, they looked at 7-day Adventists, right? A part of this study was the Seventh-day Adventist community who engage in dry fasting as a part of their religious observances. And they found that in white 7-day Adventist community that engaged in dry fasting, compared to white Americans that do not engage in dry fasting, they actually decrease the rate of developing diabetes in half. 20% of white Americans on average are at risk of developing diabetes, and only 10% of the people in the Seventh-day Adventist community actually develop diabetes later on. So it is actually really, really beneficial in preventing and for you to improve it, right? So I am going to make a quick little disclaimer here. One, I am not a medical doctor, right? My degree does not have an MD after it. So I am not telling you how to treat a disease. What I am telling you is that you should talk to your medical provider. You should not shy away from or think that because you are pre-diabetes or you have PCOS or you have diabetes, that fasting is something that's completely out for you now. it may be possible for you to actually engage in fasting. I want to also refer you to a website. I'm thinking about this offhand, so it's not on the slide, but it's called vertahealth.com. They are a collection of doctors and researchers that specifically use diet in order to reverse diabetes. So that is a resource that you can use and you can share with your doctor and medical providers. All right. With that said, let's talk about fasting and how it lowers blood pressure. Fasting does an amazing job lowering your blood pressure. And again, I want to point out the fact that dry fasting accelerates all of these effects that we're talking about, right? So one study compared dry fasting and what you ate with its effect on your blood pressure. And what they found is they took 3 groups of people. They gave one group a high fat, low carb diet in the morning time. They gave another group a high protein diet, and they gave a third group a high carb diet. And they watched them do a 12-hour dry fast. Only the group that had the high fat diet in the morning had a significant decrease in diastolic blood pressure. So if you are following a well-formulated ketogenic diet, Ramadan is not the time for you to decide that you want to go off of it or you want to eat a whole bunch of sweets. You're actually going to improve your health even more by continuing on that plan. If you are not already fat adapted or following a ketogenic diet, Ramadan is an excellent time for you to start decreasing the amount of carbohydrates that you are consuming, because what the study also showed was that when people broke their fast with a high fat diet, that they had a continued and maintain lower blood pressure than the other groups. I want to take a minute to let you know that I am telling you about all of these studies, and inside of my book, The Ramadan Blueprint, I have all of the studies listed, all of the references to the study. You can Google PubMed or any of the research websites, and you can find these studies. But if you want them all put together really nicely and condensed, then you can go to RamadanBlueprint.com and you can get there. One day of dry fasting is the metabolic equivalent to 2 to 3 days of wet fasting. This is really important for you to remember, because oftentimes, particularly those of us who engaged in wet fasting throughout the year, we know when Ramadan comes and we have to do that first week, we like, oh my goodness, I thought I was good. I could do 18 hours and just drink water, right? But we know dry fasting is a whole different ballgame. And here is why. Dry fasting actually does something that wet fasting does not. So what it does, number one, is it actually increases autophagy, right? Autophagy is cellular detox. Autophagy is a process in which your cells repair themselves, they recycle, and they reuse cell parts. It's literally like a whole recycling operation going on in your body, right? The reason why it accelerates autophagy is from a process that's called metabolic water, right? So here is, and I'm going to talk about this a couple of times, but I want you to understand this process because weight loss and detox are intricately connected and is a result of this process. When you go and you do not consume water, when you are doing a dry fast, your body actually creates its own water. Yes, our body has the ability of doing something that is called metabolic water. And what it does is that it literally goes to both the fat you consume and the fat that you have on your body that you store, and it breaks down fat cells to take a hydrogen molecule. We know water is what? H2O. You're breathing in oxygen. Now your body is like, we need water. So I'm going to actually go break open these fat cells and steal the hydrogen molecule. So it accelerates weight loss because of that process. That's the reason why dry fasting accelerates weight loss more than wet fasting. And the reason why it also accelerates autophagy is because once that fat cell is broke open, it actually releases something that's called AMPK, which accelerates autophagy. So both of those things are intricately connected. When autophagy kicks in, that is when your decrease of inflammation really goes down low. It plummets. It helps you in so many different ways. It reduces half a dozen inflammatory markers that are associated with arthritis, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, breast cancer, heart failure, psoriasis, Alzheimer's. Those are just some of the diseases that we suffer from that is a result of chronic inflammation. So because fasting decreases chronic inflammation, you are going to see an improvement in symptoms in all of these diseases. I'm going to just remind my Instagram people one more time is that I am actually presenting an entire PowerPoint with this presentation, and you can go over to Facebook and you can find me, same name, facebook.com/fitmuslima, and you can see the entire presentation there. So the big question now is, can you get these benefits if you are just fasting 14 hours a day, like we are on the East Coast in the United States? Can you get these benefits if you're not really making the healthiest eating choices when you break your fast? And I gotta be honest with you, yeah, you actually can. So here is the crazy yet amazing thing about fasting. The benefits happen at least on some part, even if you're eating unhealthy. Fasting itself is beneficial. You can receive some of the benefits even if you are binging with sweets at night, and we know a lot of Muslims do that, right? So the question that I often get is like, well, why don't we maintain all of these benefits after Ramadan if it's so beneficial? Generally because you have the fasting paired with your unhealthy eating habits, and so it reverses all of the benefits that you've had in Ramadan eventually. All right. So how do we know that these benefits they can happen even if you don't eat healthy? So there was a study. Another reference I'd like to give you is a book that is called The Circadian Code by Sachin Panda. It's a very, very interesting science-based yet practical reading. It's also available in audiobook. So I love this book. I've read it several times. It really is very eye-opening when it talks about eating, particularly intermittent fasting, and how we sleep, right? That every function and every cell in our body is actually activated or deactivated by those two things. So when they did a study with mice, they took two groups of mice, and one group, they put them on a 12-hour eating schedule. First, both groups ate the same thing. They simulated a standard American diet, a high-fat, high-carb diet, a high-fat, high-carb diet, right? Which is a SAD diet, standard American diet. And they took one group of mice and they only gave them access to food 12 hours a day. And then they took the food away the other 12 hours. The other group of mice, they gave them unlimited access to the food. So they kind of grazed on it 24 hours a day. Whenever they want it, they can go get something to eat. The group that were the grazers, they developed the equivalent to diabetes and heart disease and all type of metabolic problems. The group who was eating the exact same thing, but only in a 12-hour window, did not develop any sign of those diseases. And so this research study has prompted other research studies as well as looking at human studies to see how, even if you're not making the healthiest eating choices, fasting can be somewhat beneficial. But you will get more physical benefits by making small modifications to your diet, and we're going to talk about those. All right. Ramadan and weight loss and post-Ramadan gain. I know you've been waiting for this one. I know you want to hear me talk about it. We're going to talk about weight and we're going to talk about Ramadan. Why some people lose weight and then gain it back. Why some people don't lose weight at all. Why some people actually gain weight in Ramadan. Okay. All right. So Ramadan weight loss. Number one, there was a meta-analysis of 16 studies on weight loss in Ramadan, and they found that most Muslims actually lost weight, but really not that much. On an average, 2.6 pounds, which is what? 1.2 kilograms. And 2 weeks later, after Ramadan, they gained 50% of it back. 4 weeks later, no Ramadan difference, right? We know this from practicality. Okay. But what they found is that most of the weight loss due to Ramadan was actually because most people were actually eating less calories, and because they wasn't drinking, a lot of it was water weight. But here is the way in which Ramadan fasting or dry fasting actually can help you to lose weight. Number one, it reduces insulin, right? Everybody has insulin, whether you have diabetes or you don't have diabetes. Insulin resistance is actually one of the main forms of metabolic dysfunction in the world right now, right? When I say metabolic dysfunction, I'm talking about diabetes, I'm talking about prediabetes, I'm talking about PCOS, which insulin resistance is one of the side effects of PCOS. I'm talking about people who really aren't healthy, even if they are actually aren't diagnosed with diabetes. Diabetes is a huge issue. Metabolic dysfunction is a huge issue because of the amount of sugar and carbohydrates that we just consume. It is just a huge, huge problem. Well, when you fast, we all have insulin. Let me say that too. We all have insulin. It is a human hormone. So if you are a human being and you're watching this, you have insulin in your body, right? What your insulin does is super important. You know that I call insulin the domino hormone, because what your insulin level is doing is making everything else fall into place or out of place, right? So when you're going 12 or more hours without eating, your insulin level lowers. That is good for weight loss because your insulin is a fat storage hormone. Every time your insulin goes up high, you actually signal your body to store fat. Don't burn fat, right? When you are eating excess sugar and excess carbohydrates, particularly throughout your day, now you are storing fat and sugar at a greater rate, right? Because you're not burning that stuff off. Your insulin level is high. It's telling your body not to burn off, and it creates a metabolic dysfunction. Dry fasting has been shown to reduce insulin storage by 50% within 24 hours. So you're talking now your insulin level is doing a significant drop and your fat burning hormones is increasing. Decreasing insulin during the day, you have all of those hours where you're decreasing your insulin and your body is releasing fat, right? Now you're in a fat burning process. But unfortunately, many people load up on carbs and load up on sugar at night. And now all of those benefits of lowered insulin stops. All right? Now at night, you're having biryani, you're having baklava, you're having cookies, you're having bean pie. That's right, I'm hitting all of the cultures and nationalities. I'm hitting all of y'all, okay? You're having a little bit of everything. You're having a bunch of rice, you're having pasta. all of those things immediately sends your insulin level back up, right? So now the benefits that you've gotten throughout the day, and not even throughout the whole day, because remember, we're fasting for 14 hours here. So you really only got like 2 hours after that 12-hour mark. You really only got like 2 hours where you're getting these benefits, right? And then it stops. If you want to extend the benefits, you gotta get the sugar out. You gotta lower the carbs. I'm gonna give you some examples of what you should be eating during this month as well. Another thing that happens when you are fasting is that it increases HGH, which is human growth hormone. You increase HGH, which is a fat burning hormone. Again, if you are a human being, you have this hormone in your body, human growth hormone. One study showed that after a 24-hour fast for men, HGH increases by 3,000%. That is significant, but that's a 24-hour fast. I don't want you to think that that's what's happening during Ramadan. That's a 24-hour fast. In many of the bodybuilding communities that engage in fasting, they will actually do a 24-hour fast, then do a huge heavy lifting session in order to take advantage of the increased HGH and then eat a large meal. And that is when they kind of like try to manipulate both fasting and eating in order for them to accelerate muscle gain. What happens when HGH is high? It decreases body fat, right? So weight is not just about what the scale says. It's about what percentage of your body is fat versus lean muscle. And lots of research studies actually show that most Muslims actually decrease their body fat during the month of Ramadan. Here is the piece à la résistance, all right? The piece à la résistance is the process of metabolic water. This is really important, so you want to really listen to this, all right? Metabolic water is when your body is not consuming enough water. We know water is super important for our body, right? We know that it is half of our body as adults, 75 to 70% as children. We need water for everything in our body to function, every cell, every organ, every part of our body to function. So when we are not consuming water, our body is like, well, I have to go into survival mode and I have to create my own water. Your body goes and grabs those fat cells. It breaks the fat cells open to grab a hydrogen bond to attach to the oxygen bonds that you're breathing in so that it can create water in your body. This is a process that happens naturally. You don't have to do anything extra, and it happens pretty efficiently for Muslims in Ramadan. One of the things that we also know from research is that despite the fact that Muslims are dry fasting, most of us don't actually become dehydrated. We've put a lot of emphasis on that, and the research just is showing that it's really not a huge concern, right? Well, let's talk about hydration because it's not a huge concern, but it still is pretty important. We don't want to overextend this process of metabolic water because you can get dehydrated if you're not drinking water for 3, 4, you forgot to drink water for 5 days. We want to make sure that we're drinking water, but really that's not the biggest concern for most Muslims. So they looked at a study of Malaysian Muslims, and they actually looked at their physiological indications of dehydration, including their uric acid output, their kidney functions, all of these things that it can be an indicator of dehydration. And they found that in thousands and thousands of Muslims that they actually were not dehydrated. Most of them were little, if at all, dehydrated during the month of Ramadan. So that's good news. So when we talk about water during Ramadan, we want you to just keep your regular drinking routine. If you already drink water, you don't have to add extra to the water because it's Ramadan. because your body is actually creating water on a metabolic level, right? And your body is using fat in order to create that water. Why? Because fat is much more efficient for your body to create water. 100 grams of fat can create 107 to 110 grams of water for your body. But if your body broke down carbs into water, 100 grams of carbs can only create 60 grams of water. And if your body broke down protein, it is the most inefficient way for it to create water, because 100 grams of protein will only result in 42 grams of water. So using fat as a way for your body to create its own water is extremely efficient and effective, because it creates more than twice as much water as do if it was to break down your protein, for example, your muscles, or the protein in which you consume. It breaks open those hydrogen bonds in the fat cell, which is going to increase your fat burn, right? So how much water should you be drinking? Again, this is what you should be drinking throughout the entire year, not just in Ramadan. Half your body weight in ounces of water every single day. 10-ounce portions. The body cannot absorb large amounts of water. So often people will say, well, when I increase my water, I have to go to the bathroom all the time. I'm always in the bathroom. The reason why you're always in the bathroom is because you're drinking too much water at one time. One research study looked at Ironman and ultra marathon athletes. And again, this is an extreme example because most of us are not running Ironmans on a daily basis, or at all sometimes. Most of us, right? But even when someone was literally physically in the middle of running an ultra marathon, which is 100 miles or more, or doing an Ironman, they were able to absorb 25 to 27 ounces of an hour. Like, that was the most their muscle. And this is while they're actually engaging in intense exercise. So the average person should only, if you're sitting at your desk, only take in about 10 ounces when you drink water. So if you are guzzling, you got a 32 ounce of water, I can down this all at one time. It is not being absorbed into your body. You're really just making yourself go to the bathroom. I guess you get extra exercise for running to the bathroom so much. I'm just saying. All right, so what are the best times to drink water so you can stay hydrated in the month of Ramadan? Connect your water to your ibadah. 10-ounce portions. Wake up for suhoor, have 10 ounces. Don't try to drink a whole bunch of water during suhoor. 10 ounces, that's all you need. When you break fast, 10 ounces of water. It's going to be about half an hour, 45 minutes, right? You make Maghrib, 10 ounces of water after Maghrib. Half an hour, 45 minutes, make Isha, 10 ounces of water right before you start praying Isha. You're going to take about a half an hour, 45 minutes. Taraweeh going to come in, 10 ounces right before you takbir in. Halfway through, about an hour at the beginning of Ramadan, 10 ounces in between the break of Taraweeh. And then 10 ounces before you go to bed. Now you've gotten about 70, 80 ounces of water in. And it's in small portions. Your body is actually using and absorbing it. And it is going to keep you hydrated, but still allow you not to have to go to the bathroom every 2 seconds. All right? All right. What we have gotten wrong, myself included. Right? So here is some of the things that I want to backtrack on, and I think that we have to look at. When I say we, I mean those of us who are health and wellness professionals that are advising Muslims during Ramadan. We've gotten a few things wrong, right? We're giving Ramadan nutrition advice based on non-Ramadan metabolism. Because when we fast, the metabolism changes significantly. That metabolic water is really a huge part of that. The autophagy is a huge part of that. So this is something that is a problem, that we are telling people to do the same things outside of Ramadan as we tell them to do inside of Ramadan, right? We've gotten that wrong. We've been trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, particularly around our advice around hydration, right? How many times do we see people saying, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate? That's what you need to focus on. It's like the most important thing. Make sure you hydrate. Come to find out, we need to hydrate, but it's really not a huge problem for most Muslims. Other things like we tell people eat whole grains, eat whole grains. Okay, if you want to eat whole grains, but technically that's not what's giving you energy at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And exercise and nutrition has been something that has just been completely left out, or been telling people to do things that really isn't that beneficial. So let's try to look at what the research and science actually says, right? So I'm backtracking this Ramadan on some of the opinions that even I have given in the past. So I want you to stay with me, and so we can talk about this, particularly around what our metabolism and our body does, right? We can't give advice on non-Ramadan metabolism during the month of Ramadan. That's sort of kind of like telling people how to fix a Tesla based on Ford mechanics. Not that one is better than the other, or everybody should do one or drive one better than the other. They're just different. You can't use the same tools on an electronic car that you use on a car that's run off of gas. It's just a completely different metabolic process, sort of like when you're fasting versus when you're not fasting. It just requires different consideration. But the good news is that we do have science to talk about this whole process to guide us along the way, right? So what is some of the best things that we can actually eat that the research tells us is going to be the most beneficial to help us throughout our fasting day? So one study looked at macros, right? What are the things that you need to have for suhoor that is going to keep you full longer, that is going to help you not suffer from of course, you're going to eventually be thirsty during the day, but actually not suffer from dehydration or any of the negative side effects that fasting fasting people can have. For those of us who fast during the month of Ramadan, we know that first week of Ramadan, if you're not used to fasting, can be trying. All right. So research looked at having high fat meal in the morning versus high protein versus high carb. And they found that people who had high fat in the morning had less discomfort, all of those feeling fatigued, tired, thirsty, all headaches, all of those things, less of that, having high fat in the morning. And they had less thirst, right? And as I mentioned earlier, those people actually had a greater drop in blood pressure. So particularly if high blood pressure is an issue for you, you want to increase your fat for suhoor, right? This is what the research has told us. The other thing that higher fat has actually did was their post-fasting glucose decreased, right? That means after Ramadan, those high fat, low carb meals were the most beneficial, all right? But again, let's refer back to the studies that we also saw between Dubai and Morocco, and we want to make that a variety of fat. The second thing that you want to think about when you are putting together your meals for suhoor is protein. When you have protein, one, it boosts the metabolism. That means that when you consume protein, your body actually has to expend more energy breaking down protein than it does breaking down fat or carbs. So you're going to have a metabolic boost just because your body is expending energy to break the protein down. It also keeps you full longer. So here is what we know from the research. Oatmeal in the morning metabolizes in 2 hours. So if you're eating oatmeal, whole grain bread, all of those things at 5 a.m., you're not working off of that energy at 12 o'clock noon. That has already been metabolized in your system, and it is no longer giving you immediate energy or long-term energy. That's just simply false on a physiological level, right? But what we do know is fat and protein actually gives you longer term energy. We're not trying to avoid being hungry, right? What we're trying to do, because that's going to probably eventually happen when you go 12, 14, 16 hours without eating and you're not used to fasting, right? Eventually you'll probably get hungry at some point. But what we are trying to do is making sure that we can sustain our energy, because many of us live in societies, whether it's a majority Muslim country or a majority non-Muslim country. The world does not stop for most of us when we're fasting. We have to still go to work. We have to still go to school. We have to still get up and take care of our kids, right? Even if you're not in work or school, you're still taking care of your kids during the day. You're still functioning and taking care of your house. All of those things still happen during the day. And our goal is to make sure that we can maintain our energy and avoid fatigue and any of the negative consequences of fat during a dry fast. Well, protein and fat are two of those things. So some suhoor ideas that would actually be beneficial for you is, for example, to have some plain Greek yogurt, plain, no pre-flavored, where they're adding sugar to your yogurt, Greek yogurt, not regular yogurt, because Greek yogurt is going to give you that protein we talked about, right? Greek yogurt, berries, and nuts on top of it. Remember, we talked about the importance of fat for suhoor? Those nuts is what's giving you the fat, right? Berries is going to give you some antioxidants. It's low in sugar. It's going to allow you to still mitigate your insulin level. So Greek yogurt, sprinkle some berries and nuts on the top of it. Eggs, avocados, and veggies, right? Great suhoor option. A lot of people will say, well, you know what? It's trendy and I like my avocado toast in the morning. If that's what you eat, that is actually a really good suhoor choice. Not because of the toast, but because of the fat in the avocados. So avocado toast is a good suhoor choice because of the fat in the avocados. Remember, it's that fat that is going to keep you hydrated. And that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? Like, oh, I'm eating fat to stay hydrated. But it's science. Fat from the avocado is actually how you are going to stay hydrated and ward off of the negative effects of fasting. All right, so let's talk about iftar. What should we eat for iftar? All right, when you break fast, number one, the thing that you should break fast with is certainly you should be drinking water. Again, it's not a huge concern, but we don't want to ignore the fact that you are going to be fasting for 28 or 29 consecutive days. We want to make sure that we are not going overboard in becoming dehydrated, but we are keeping up with our regular amount of water. And the one thing that I get asked, well, if you say we shouldn't eat sugar, can we break our fast with dates? The date question. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Okay, I'm going to give two answers to this. One, if you are following a low-carb ketogenic diet, no, you cannot eat dates. Dates is a high-sugar food. It will kick you out of ketosis, and you should not have it during Ramadan or anytime if you are trying to stay in ketosis. That is my first answer to all of my clients, to all of the people that follow me, to all of the Muslims who may be doing keto. And number two, my second answer to this is, actually I'm going to give you a second answer, and then I'm going to give you a disclaimer to think about, and then I'm going to give you food for thought. First, if you're following a ketogenic diet, no dates. It will kick you out of ketosis. Dates are very, very high in sugar. In fact, 2 medjool dates has the same amount of sugar as a can of soda. Yes, your body, your insulin level in your body does not care if the sugar comes from a date or candy bar, a date or soda. It does not care. Your insulin level will still rise. If you are diabetic, you should not be eating a handful of dates at iftar. If you are pre-diabetic, it's going to have the same effect. As you know, my philosophy is there is no such thing as a universally healthy food, right? In fact, for diabetics, honey can put you in a diabetic coma. But if you're not diabetic, it can be very beneficial. Tomatoes are a perfectly healthy food. But if you have acid reflux, you shouldn't be eating tomatoes. It is going to exacerbate your health problem. Same thing with dates. Sugar is sugar is sugar. The insulin in your body is going to respond the same way. With that said, I do recommend that if you do eat dates because you're not in a ketogenic plan, have one, my dear. Don't eat 5. Don't try to make an entire meal out of dates. It's sugar. I guarantee you, when you overdo on the sugar, you are going to not just affect your metabolic process, you're also going to affect your Ivada. When you have those spikes in insulin, you are going to crash later. Those are the days where you're not going to feel like making tarawih. You're going to struggle to stay up for Isha. All of those things happen, and people don't connect it with how they are actually eating. So those are my 2 date questions. My third food for thought is eating dates to break your fast is a sunnah, not a fard. So don't come to me with the attacks. Oh, you're telling people don't practice a sunnah. I'm telling you to heal yourself, which is a fard. I'm telling you that you need to do what is the best thing for your health and your health goals. And we have many examples inside of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he told people to eat something or not eat something based on their health condition. And I treat dates the same way. It is based on your health condition. All right. So don't come in my DM. Just saying. All right. What do you want to eat for iftar? Number 1, avoid all of the simple sugars. We are talking, or simple carbs. I'm telling you how to make fasting the most healthful fast that you can have, right? So not just so Ramadan can be beneficial on a spiritual level, so they can be beneficial on a physical level. You want to cut out the sweets. You want to cut out things like soda and juice. You know, I am an anti-juicer, right? I don't care if it's squeezed with your own hands. Juice is the most unnatural way for you to consume the nutrients inside of fruits and vegetables. Eat whole foods whole, all right? I'm going to make a meme that say that. Eat whole foods whole. Really important. Cutting out rice, pasta, sweets, bread, soda, juice. Yes, cut it all out. If you are already following a well-formulated, high-fat, low-carb diet, continue to follow it because it is going to give you the most health benefits. A ketogenic diet was literally developed to simulate fasting and the health benefits of fasting. They looked at fasting. They saw that it was extremely beneficial. Initially, it was looked at for as a protocol to treat epilepsy and its benefits on the brain. But obviously, telling somebody to fast for 30 days, a lot of people were not really going to adhere to that. Just drink water for 30 days. So they said, how can we get people to actually eat food, but still maintain the health and the physiological response of fasting? And that is when they developed a ketogenic diet, because they looked at what fasting does. Remember, we talked earlier about how fasting literally causes your body to break down fat cells, convert them into ketones, and use ketones for energy. When the brain functions on ketones, and yes, the brain functions on ketones, your brain do not only function on glucose. We've known this for at least 50 years. So if you think that your brain only functions on glucose, please go to PubMed and do some research. Your brain functions very efficiently on ketones. What a ketogenic diet does is it allows you to eat food while still producing those ketones, right? So if you're on a ketogenic diet, you are in the best position to have a wonderful experience fasting. All right. What we need to eat for iftar. All right. I am going on my, okay. I end up going back on my PowerPoint. All right. So when you are eating iftar, if you are following a ketogenic plan, then that's awesome. If you are not, I encourage you to minimize the amount of carbohydrates that you are consuming, because if you can keep your insulin level low, even in the evening time when you're actually eating, then you are going to get even more benefits physiologically from fasting. Some ideas for iftar would be bean chili, not if you're following a ketogenic diet, but if you are eating carbs, if your goal is not to be in ketosis, then beans are actually absolutely fine. And they're protein and they're very slow digesting carbohydrates. So you can actually have that for iftar, meat optional, right? Steak and vegetables, stir-fried tofu, salmon and asparagus. All of these types of meal is going to give you lots of micronutrients. Remember those vegetables, right? The vegetables, the asparagus, the greens, the squash. You should, and I'm recommending that everybody actually try to do this one thing. Have 2 vegetables for every iftar that you have. 2 vegetables, all right? 2 vegetables for iftar. Add protein to that. Add protein to that. Your protein is going to be super, right? So you want to have protein, salmon and asparagus, stir-fried tofu, steak and vegetables. All of those are good. Remember, don't shy away from the fat. It's the fat that is going to keep you hydrated. It is the fat that is going to give you energy. Your body is going to convert that fat into energy, but have a variety of fat. That means that, yes, you can have your marbleized steak. Yes, you can have your lamb, but also have olive oil and avocados and fatty fish like salmon and sardines. Make it a combination of different types of fat. Eat whole foods whole. Fat is important. If we even look at the way that Allah has given us fat, it is almost always, 95% of the time, it is combined with protein. So think about it. It is not just on meat, it is literally intertwined in the meat that we eat. That is how important it is for us to consume fat, that it has been put in many different ways, right? For us to consume it along with other foods that we eat. All right, so eat this and not so much of that, right? Cut out the sugar, right? I want to give a sugar challenge. Go all of Ramadan with no sugar. Save it on an Eid, make an Eid cake. No sugar all Ramadan. you will see the most significant impact. If you're the type of person that you like eating desserts after iftar, that you like your cakes, your cookies, you like your ice cream, all of those things, if you cut out sugar for 30 days, you're not going to just see a dramatic effect in your weight, but you're going to feel the effect of your health, right? And don't wait till the first day of Ramadan. Start today. So that if you start feeling any sugar drawbacks, which you can, because sugar is addictive, it is a drug. So if you are addicted to sugar, you may get a headache. So start now. This is also it's late and we're getting ready to start Ramadan in a couple of days, but this is also one of the hikmas of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would actually start fasting in Sha'ban, right? Preparing the body and the mind for Ramadan, right? So at least you know for next year. Start earlier, but for now, start now, right? Cut out the juice, cut out the processed foods, cut out the high carb foods. What do I mean by that? Processed foods. If you are picking up a package, I don't care if it says it's keto, if it says that it's paleo, if it says that it's vegan. If there's room for those words on the package, then it is processed. Your goal is to minimize and eventually eliminate processed foods. So if you can read a label, then it's probably processed. All right? Take out processed foods. High carb foods. I'm talking about your French fries. I'm talking about the muffins and bagels, those huge, gigantic bagels people eat with eggs. It's like the eggs get lost because the bagel's so big. Cut it out. All right. Next. Yes. No soda, no juice. This is like, if you've been following me for more than 6 months and you still drink soda and juice, you not listening. If you still drink juice, you not listening. I need you to hear me. Hear the words coming out of my mouth. All right? Hear me. Stop drinking juice. Normalize drinking water. I don't care what kind of water you drink. Drink water. Alkaline, distilled, Amazonian, tap water, river water, I don't know, rainwater that you got out of your gutters. I don't care. Long as it don't got lead in it, then drink it, all right? Drink water. Normalize drinking water. Normalize drinking water for your family. Normalize giving water to little babies. Water, water, water. We are meant to drink water. We are not meant to juice 5 oranges and drink the juice without the rest of the orange. That is unnatural, all right? We're not meant to put carrots and apples inside a big old squeeze thing and squeeze all the juice out and throw away the pulp or separate the pulp. No, all right? And again, when it comes to water, I want you to drink water. I don't care if it's hot. I don't care if it's cold. I don't care if it's room temperature, right? Yes, you can get all detailed and all the other stuff, but drink water. Once you have consistently drunk half your body weight in ounces of water for 3 months, then you get into, oh, let me look at the quality of my water, right? Sort of kind of like eating organic vegetables. Yes, it's great for you to eat organic vegetables, but if you're not eating no vegetables right now because they're not organic, you're doing yourself more harm. You're doing more harm than good. Frozen vegetables is better than no vegetables. Even some canned vegetables are better than no vegetables. You don't have to only eat organic vegetables, right? That's phase 2 of your health journey. I don't want you to not eat vegetables because I can't afford organic vegetables. Eat vegetables, drink water. Super important. All right. Want to reiterate. Yes, I'm talking about dates too when I say decrease sugar. 2 medjool dates has 133 calories, 36 grams of carbohydrates. 32 of those grams of carbohydrates is straight sugar. Yes, it's natural sugar, but your body and your insulin level is going to treat it as sugar. Sugar is just the molecules, whether it's inside of a date or it's inside of a soda can, right? A soda has 39 grams of sugar. A date has 32 grams of sugar. You're like stuffing your face with all of these dates. It's literally like you're just drinking a soda. All right? So remember, it's a sunnah, not a fard. Lastly, but not least, let's talk about working out. All right? Let's talk about keeping your workouts going. Let's talk about making sure that you don't lose your gains during this month. If you know anybody that is concerned about working out during Ramadan, this next 10 minutes is going to be the most important part. So make sure you share this and you tag them. All right? So when is the right time to work out during Ramadan? All right. During Ramadan, yes, our body changes a little. And the reason why it changes is because of all of those differences in the metabolic processes that we experience. That metabolic water, that autophagy, that takes a lot of energy. So you got all of this internal energy being expended while you're doing your dry fasting. And studies show us that, yeah, it can decrease your strength, right? But we probably didn't need a study to tell us that. For those of us who exercise, we know that in Ramadan, first week we may be doing good, but by week 3, we used to be able to lift 30 pounds. Now I think I'm going to do 15, right? So one study showed that they actually study, again, the beautiful thing about this is that we don't even have to extrapolate whether or not they are talking about Muslims in Ramadan. They literally looked at Muslim athletes and they saw that their maximum output decreased, which means the intensity in which they were able to exercise or expend energy actually decreased while they're fasting. So if you are a football player or if you do heavy weight training, yes, this is one of the side effects of fasting. You may not be able to train as hard, but you can still train. But the good news is that if you do something that requires a neuromuscular response like karate or golfing, that's still a sport, or something that requires a quick response, your neuromuscular response actually is not affected during Ramadan. So if you are kickboxing, if you are boxing and you have to, block, you have to dip, you have to respond to something coming towards you, that is actually not affected. They looked at karate athletes during Ramadan and they found that their response time was not affected by the fast. So that's good news, right? If you are exercising for the purpose of weight loss, excellent news is, like we talked about several times before, you are going to increase the amount of weight that you lose, the amount of fat that you burn, because as your body increases its need for water, particularly if you're doing exercise that's requiring you to sweat, that's a little higher intensity, then yes, you will actually lose more weight because as your body's need for water increases, it's going to break down even more fat cells. All right. So what would be the recommendation? Number one, if you are going to continue to exercise in Ramadan, it is okay and actually recommended for you to decrease the intensity. I probably don't have to tell you that because your body's going to tell you that naturally, hey, I can't do the same thing at the same intensity. So you're going to decrease your intensity. So that means, for example, instead of going for a jog, you may want to go for a walk, right? So if normally, hey, I normally go and jog 2 miles a couple of times a week, then you can walk 3 miles or 4 miles. Go for endurance as opposed to intensity. That will allow you to maintain your fitness level while you are actually doing your exercise and being consistent. The most important thing is don't stop in Ramadan. That's the worst thing that you can do. Also, as a side note, also don't use Ramadan to start exercising. This is probably the only time of year that I will actually tell people this. Ramadan is not the time for you to start an exercise program. Yes, it is okay to change your diet in Ramadan. Yes, it's okay for you to start other types of programs. And it is not the time, if you have not exercised in 2 years and all of a sudden you're going to I'm going to fast Ramadan and I'm going to start walking 3 miles a day. Don't do it. All right. When you exercise, you actually create metabolic stress. This is good, but that stress on top of the stress that dry fasting creates, such as the shift in metabolic water, the shift in autophagy, the shift in your insulin level, you can actually create a very difficult fast for yourself. So if you want to use Ramadan as a kickstart of a healthy lifestyle, start with your diet and then plan on incorporating exercise when Ramadan is over. If you are already exercising and you have seen effects of your exercising and getting towards your goal, do not stop. Do not stop during Ramadan, because it can set you way, way back, going 4 weeks with no exercise. Make sure you keep going. All right. Cardio. So when we talk about exercise, we're going to talk about it in 2 different ways: cardiovascular exercise and strength training exercise. Best time for cardio is anytime, right? If you are used to just going for a 3-mile run, go for a 3-mile run, beginning of your day, middle of your day, any end of your day. It really is not going to affect. The only thing that's going to be affected is whether or not you have the energy to do the run, right? It's really not going to affect your muscle or change the way that you're going to burn fat or the way that you're going to build muscle or maintain muscle. Doing cardiovascular exercise in general can be done at any time during the day. I do recommend that you decrease your intensity and increase the length or the distance in which you are running. That is a good way. And just be conscious of dehydration. So again, when we talk about dehydration earlier, we're talking about the average person. If you're training for a marathon and you want to do that in Ramadan, you should certainly be conscious that you are making sure that you're staying hydrated throughout your month. Best time for you to do resistance training exercise. So when we talk about resistance training, I want to be really specific. One, it is any time that you are doing exercises that are anaerobic. So that means when you're lifting weights, right? When you are doing CrossFit, when you're doing a HIIT workout, when you're doing push-ups, squats, lunges, anything around that, right? All of those are anaerobic exercises. The goal of these exercises is for you to increase muscle fibers. The process of increasing muscle fibers require your muscles to consume amino acids, which is the proteins that you consume. When you are doing a workout that is anaerobic and whose goal is for you to increase muscle size, you must accompany food with that. So this is where nutrient timing comes into place. The best time for you to do resistance training is either 2 hours before iftar. Why 2 hours? Because when you are done doing a resistance training workout, your body is looking for protein to consume. And if it does not consume protein, it is going to fizzle out. You're not going to get the results. You're going to do a super hard workout and there's going to be nothing for your muscles to consume because you did it at after Fajr and you still got 10 hours of fasting in front of you. Don't do that. I know that it's been great and you've been able to maintain it. If you can do that energy-wise, is different than whether or not it's beneficial for you. If your goal is to gain lean muscle, it is not beneficial for you to do a strength training workout after Fajr and you got 10, 12 hours of fasting in front of you. You need to do it within a 2-hour window of when you can consume protein. All right. So you're going to do your resistance training workout 2 hours before iftar or 2 hours after you eat. You do not want to do it immediately after you eat because your blood supply is going to be competing between Can I grow muscle, right? Send the blood to the muscles to move, to help the muscles move, or send the blood to the digestive system because I just ate a meal. You don't want your body to have to compete in that way. So 2 hours minimum after you eat, 2 to 4 hours. Or you can do it early in the morning before you eat sahur, so you can, again, have protein. You must, and this is something that is, whether or not you're fasting or not fasting, if you are doing resistance training and your goal is to become stronger, to increase muscle size, increase muscle strength, you need to be consuming protein immediately after and within a 2-hour window after your resistance training workout. All right? Really important. So time matters. Never do resistance training in the middle of your fasting day. Never, 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 never. Right? That is a recipe for disaster. You do not want to reverse your gains. You want to make sure that you're doing them when you can eat protein. All right? All right. If you want more information about exactly what to eat, menu, meal plan, recipes, I invite you to go and download the Ramadan Blueprint at ramadanblueprint.com. If you want to follow me, I'm going to tell you all the ways that you can get in touch with me. Number one, if you're watching this on Instagram, know that I did an entire PowerPoint, which I am presenting on both Facebook and YouTube. And so you can definitely go to one of those platforms and you can listen to the presentation again, and you can see the PowerPoint. Yes, this live will be saved as long as Instagram allows me to save it, because I realize I've been on here for 90 minutes. But if Instagram doesn't allow me to save it, Facebook and YouTube will allow me to save it. So it will be on Facebook and YouTube. You can actually DM me on social media if you are interested in coaching. You can email me at info@fitmuslimah.com. You can text me at 203-633-8440. And you can get the ebook, RamadanBlueprint.com. And I also want to invite you to join me, ladies, for a Ramadan intensive on goal setting and dua building for the month of Ramadan. I'm going to take you through my step-by-step process of creating clarity. According to the Quran and Sunnah, we have worksheets, we have action steps. You are going to find what fulfills you, envision your biggest dream, and then make it bigger. Align your vision with your iman, and laser focus and create your clear action plan. I invite you to go to visionbuildersdua.com and join us for the month of Ramadan. It is twice a week, 1 hour twice a week for 3 weeks. We end right before the last 10 days so that we can make this, inshallah, our most productive Ramadan, physically, mentally, and spiritually. All right, I am on social here, and I'm going to actually take some questions. If you ask a question based on something that I have already talked about, then I will refer you to watch this live over again. All right, so questions. Kelly, I believe I answered your questions. What kind of healthy fats can I eat? We talked about that. Do beets and turnips slow down your weight loss? Beets and turnips depends on what type of program that you are following. So I'm not going to say it slows it down or speeding up. It is really dependent on whether or not you're following a low carb plan, whether or not you're following Mediterranean. So I can't tell you how it affects your system because I don't know what you are eating. All right. Is that why Harari soup works? Because it is basically bone broth. Not sure what that's referring to. If Harari soup, it works doing what, Aaliyah? Huh? All right. Yes, Zam Goods. Those bean pies too. Those bean pies too. All right. Yes, inshallah, I will save this live for my people on on Instagram. Sabs asks, what type of water? I don't care what kind of water. ARF9707 asks, what kind of water? Drink water. I do not care what kind of water you drink. Again, the kind of water is step 2. We're talking about basic step 1 stuff. Drink water, eat vegetables. Don't get fancy. All right? Don't get fancy. Monica, I believe I answered that. What kind of stuff did you can eat for suhoor? I answered that to help keep energy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it has been absolutely amazing being able to give you all of this information. I am super duper excited for you to make the most of this Ramadan. Make the absolute most of this Ramadan. It is so important to me that you have the best physical, mental, and spiritual well-being for the month. All of those things are completely intertwined. The generations of Muslims, the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, the Tabi'een, they all understood this. Umar ibn Khattab, he said, be careful not to overeat because it will prevent you from getting up for the night prayer. So the Sahabas understood that what we ate affected our ability to complete ibadah. So are we saying like, oh, if you drink soda, then you're a bad Muslim? Nope, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you want to increase your iman, then you have to engage in ibadah, right? We know this. This is the formula of Islam, right? Engage in those things that please Allah. Engage in those ways in which we worship Allah. If we want to increase our iman, we cannot engage in those things if we do not have a healthy body. You can't bow down if you can't get down. Say it with me. You can't bow down if you can't get down. That is how important taking care of our health is, right? For people who have neglected their health and as a result, they can no longer fast, and they know that it's because they neglected their health. Now, I'm not talking about people who are sick by means that are outside of their control. They have type 1 diabetes. They've developed cancer. They developed some autoimmune disease that they had no control over. I'm not talking about those people. We know that Allah has given them exception. But for those of us who know that we have neglected our health, that has brought on a disease that prevents us from fasting, right? That's a different level of how your iman is going to increase. We have to connect what we eat to our iman. We have to connect how we eat to our iman. We have to connect the choices that we are making with our movement, with our bodies. We have to connect with our iman, because it is one of the steps in order for you to achieve better worship of Allah, in order for you to be a better Muslim. So do the things that will improve your health and your well-being with the intention of using that to worship Allah, and then your workout becomes your worship. Then your food becomes your worship. Everything that you do with the intention of the pleasure of Allah becomes your worship, right? Even if you decide every day I'm going to do 100 jumping jacks, you're jumping jacks with the intentions of it improving your body, your health, your well-being, because you know that it's going to give you energy to be able to stand up and pray longer. That now becomes ibadah. We have to connect our fork to our ibadah the same way we connect a prayer rug to ibadah. It's really important that we put these things together on a mental conscious level so that we know that everything we do to improve our health will, inshallah, reap reward for us in this life, helping you to live with greater vitality, and in the akhirah, helping you to send these forth for yourself. You cannot be of those who take care of the sick if you are the sick being taken care of. So with that, inshallah, I am going to leave you with this for food for thought. Remember to share this. I know that it's kind of long. I'm going to try to come back and tag it at time points so that all of the important information that you feel like you need to get to, you'll know exactly where to forward it to if you need to, but definitely take the time to listen and to absorb the information. Inshallah, may you have a blessed Ramadan. May it benefit you physically, mentally, spiritually, bring you closer to Allah, and may it be the best Ramadan with the most barakah that you have ever experienced, inshallah. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.